Welcome back to Teenage Nightmares, the place that drags you deeper into the world of the unknown. Tonight's tale takes us on a journey back to 1999, so grab your headphones, get comfortable, and enjoy a Teenage Nightmares original, The Theater Freak. Hello, my name is Carla, and this story takes place during the summer of 1999. With school out for the break, I decided to get a summer job to save up for my own car. My mom was a single parent, and buying me one wasn't an option, so I figured I'd earn the money myself. That's how I ended up working at our local movie theater. The first few weeks were pretty normal, nothing too exciting, aside from the occasional weirdo who wandered in. One of the weirdos was a man named Vinny. He was around 40 years old, smelled awful, and seemed to have no life. He spent nearly every day at the theater alone, watching 2 or 3 movies in a row. But that wasn't the strangest thing about him. The real problem was the way he talked to me. He insisted on calling me weird, uncomfortable nicknames, baby doll and sugar plum, like he thought we had some kind of special connection. I asked him politely, over and over, to stop. I even told him I was only 17, hoping that would make him realize how inappropriate he was being, but he didn't care. No matter how many times I told him to cut it out, he kept doing it. Eventually, I complained enough that management finally stepped in and banned him from the theater. And I thought that was the end of it. If only I knew the nightmare was just beginning. Weeks passed after Vinny was banned, and I had no problems. He hadn't shown up, hadn't lingered outside. I thought I was in the clear. But then came a random Tuesday. The theater was practically empty, just the hum of the projectors and the faint scent of stale popcorn in the air. That's when I saw him. Vinny. He was running down one of the hallways. My stomach dropped. I hadn't seen him enter the theater. I would have noticed. So how the hell did he get in? Panic shot through me, and I wasted no time. I ran to find my friend Jimmy, the only guy working that night, and told him to chase Vinny out. He searched every inch of the theater, but Vinny was nowhere to be found. He even checked the bathrooms, twice, before coming back to me, shaking his head. "He's not here, Carla." I looked everywhere. I stood there, stunned, confused. Had I imagined it? Was I just freaking myself out? The thought gnawed at me as I tried to shake the uneasy feeling in my gut. Eventually, I told Jimmy I was too rattled to keep working. He didn't argue, just nodded and let me go home early. But the unease lingered. 3 nights passed before I finally understood how we had missed Vinny that night. It was another late shift, our last showing winding down. The theater was quiet, the kind of silence that makes every creak and whisper seem louder than it should. I was waiting for Theater 3 to finish so I could clean up and finally head home for the night. That's when I noticed Theater 5's door slowly creak open. But that didn't make sense. No movie was playing in there. It had been shut down for renovations and updates for weeks. A chill ran down my spine as I grabbed my walkie-talkie. "Hey, Fred?" Fred was our security guard. "Can you check out Theater 5? The door just opened on its own." Static crackled before Fred's voice came through. "On my way." Minutes later, he met me outside the darkened theater, flashlight in hand. Without a word, he stepped forward and pushed the door open wider, the hinges letting out a slow, agonized groan. Then, he disappeared into the darkness. Minutes passed in silence. Then, from inside the theater, I heard it. Muffled grunts, the unmistakable sounds of a struggle. A loud, agonized scream followed. My stomach dropped. It had to be Fred. I sprinted inside, my breath coming in short, panicked gasps. The theater was pitch black except for the faint glow of the emergency exit sign. I searched desperately, calling Fred's name, but there was no sign of him. Then, I noticed something. A door near the base of the massive screen, the staff-only entrance, was open. That door led to the walk-in storage room. Heart pounding, I stepped forward, pushing the door open wider. The air inside was thick and stale, the scent of dust and something rotting hanging in the air. As I took another cautious step, I heard it, ragged, labored breathing coming from my left. Someone was in there with me. I braced myself for whoever was behind me, convinced it had to be Vinny. My heart pounded as I slowly turned around, but to my surprise, it was Fred. His face was pale, his body barely holding on. I grabbed his flashlight and shone it on him, my stomach twisting at the sight. His neck had been slashed, the wound deep and oozing. Without thinking, I tore off my sweater and pressed it against his neck, trying to stop the bleeding. But deep down, I knew. These were his final moments. "I'm sorry," I whispered, over and over. Guilt crushed me. I was the one who sent him in there. Before I could spiral further, a scream tore through the silence. "Vinny!" He came charging from behind, hurling obscenities at me. Fred, with what little strength he had left, gripped my arm. His voice was weak, but firm. "Run." And I did. I bolted out of the cramped space, lungs burning, fear pushing me forward. But I wasn't safe yet. I still had to get out of Theater 5. I heard him closing in behind me as I sprinted toward the exit. He was fast, too fast. Before I could reach the door, he grabbed me. I screamed, kicking and thrashing, but he held on tight. "I love you," he kept repeating, his voice desperate, unhinged. Panic surged through me. This wasn't just obsession. This was a death sentence. I knew how this would end. He would kill me, then probably himself. Desperation took over. My fingers fumbled for the box cutter in my back pocket. The moment I felt the handle, I yanked it out and slashed wildly. He let out a blood-curdling scream. I didn't waste a second. I bolted out of Theater 5, covered in his and Fred's blood. My hands shook as I dialed the police, barely able to form words. By the time the police arrived, Vinny was still inside, just sitting there, holding his ruined eye. Turns out, I'd blinded him completely in one. I felt no remorse though, none at all, and I was right not to, because Vinny wasn't just some unhinged creep. He was a murderer, responsible for the deaths of 4 other teenage girls. I was supposed to be number 5, and if he had succeeded, it would have happened in Theater 5. How fitting. The creep had been living in the small storage space inside Theater 5. That's why we never saw him enter. He was already there, hiding in the darkness, listening to us, watching us. When the police were booking him, he admitted he had snuck in one night and never left. The thought still makes my skin crawl. How many times had I walked past that storage room, completely unaware of what was inside? I'm just relieved he's locked away for the rest of his life. But sometimes, when I close my eyes, I swear I can still feel his presence, like he's watching me from some unseen corner. So, to the creep of Theater 5, I hope you never see the light of day again.